window to the universe. You are listening to Risale-i Podcasts.
Welcome to Risale-i Podcasts.
Glad to be diving in again.
We have some really profound material today. We're taking a deep dive into Bediüzzaman Said Nursi's work, specifically looking at how he addresses one of the biggest questions, really, for anyone. What happens after we die?
A fundamental question, absolutely.
Yeah, and we're focusing on the 10th word from the Risale-i collection. This is where Bediüzzaman really digs into the reality of resurrection and the hereafter. Mm-hmm. And he doesn't just, state it. He presents this really structured argument through what he calls 12 distinct aspects.
12 different ways of looking at it, essentially, like facets of a diamond.
Exactly. So 12 proofs or perspectives. So our mission today is to unpack these aspects, try to get a clearer understanding of the reasoning Said Nursi presents in the Risale-i collection.
And explore how he connects the world we actually observe, the everyday world, with the idea of a life beyond this one.
Right. So where do we start? It's important to grasp how central this topic is, isn't it?
It really is. You need to understand right from the start that this topic in the 10th word isn't just some minor detail of belief for Said Nursi.
No, it feels much bigger than that.
It is. As you see throughout the Risale-i collection, the whole concept of resurrection and the hereafter really shapes our understanding of purpose. Why are we here? Do our actions actually matter in the long run?
Does any of it have lasting significance?
Precisely. And Bediüzzaman approaches this massive subject very systematically in the 10th word, offering this structure, these 12 aspects, as a framework for thinking about it.
Okay, so not just one argument, but building it piece by piece. These 12 comparative aspects. It's quite a unique approach.
It is. It invites you, the reader, or listener in this case, to consider resurrection from multiple angles. The hope seems to be that at least one, maybe several, will really click with your own understanding or intuition.
Like different paths to the same conclusion.
You could say that. This method allows for a really rich, multi-layered look at something that can feel quite abstract otherwise. Now, while we might not have every single detail of all 12 explicitly laid out in every passage we discuss,
right,
you can definitely get a feel for the kinds of arguments Said Nursi uses by looking at the core themes that keep recurring throughout the Risale-i.
Okay, yeah. And thinking about those core themes, one that immediately jumps out when reading Said Nursi is the sheer power of the divine, God's power.
Mm-hmm, the creative power.
He often talks about how God creates these incredibly complex systems, like seemingly without effort. The classic example is spring, isn't it? How life just bursts forth after winter.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That yearly renewal is such a potent analogy. This is what Risale-i says about it in the words, "Look upon the signs of God's mercy and see how he restores life to the earth after its death. Verily he it is who shall bring to life the dead, and he is powerful over all things." And what's really insightful there, and Said Nursi often refers back to this, is how that verse directly links this natural rebirth, something we see every year, with the potential for the ultimate resurrection.
So the argument is, if God can bring life back to seemingly dead earth,
then recreating individual life after physical death, well, that should also be within his power, right? It's an argument from observed power to potential power.
That makes sense. Linking the miracle we see every spring to the greater miracle of resurrection. That's compelling.
It's one strong aspect.
Okay. Another theme that, well, it definitely resonates with me, and I think many people, is justice.
Ah, yes, divine justice.
Because, let's face it, this world, it doesn't always seem fair, does it? You see good people suffer. And sometimes, well, people who do wrong seem to get away with it, even prosper.
That feeling, that inherent sense that things aren't quite right, that justice isn't always served here, that points towards another crucial aspect.
The need for ultimate justice.
Exactly. The requirement of divine justice. The Risale-i, especially in places like the Rays, really grapples with this. It implicitly asks, wouldn't a perfectly just God ultimately ensure fairness? Mm-hmm. So the hereafter becomes the realm where that perfect justice can finally be realized, where the scales are balanced and everyone receives their due for good or ill.
So it provides that sense of ultimate accountability, which ties into another point I find really interesting in the Said Nursi's work. This idea that creation isn't random, it has purpose.
Mm-hmm.
Everything seems so intricately designed, so connected. And then you look at us, humans, with these really deep desires, these longings for immortality, for perfect happiness, things this temporary world just can't seem to fully deliver.
That inherent purposefulness you see in the universe and those deep-seated human longings, they likely form another aspect. As you find mentioned in the flashes and the rays and the Risale-i collection, these innate desires we have for endless joy, for meaning, for achieving our full potential, they seem to point beyond this life.
Like signposts.
Kind of. The idea is that these profound feelings aren't just glitches. They might actually be indicators, hints of a future reality where they can be fulfilled, a realm designed for that fulfillment.
It's like there's something in us that already knows there's more, even if our logical minds struggle.
Mm-hmm.
And then closely related is how Bediüzzaman talks about God's names and attributes: mercy, wisdom, justice.
Yes, the divine names.
You see reflections of them here, but maybe imperfectly?
That's a great way to put it. The testimony of divine names and attributes is another powerful line of reasoning. You observe manifestations of God's mercy, his wisdom, his justice in this life, right?
Yeah, in nature and acts of kindness.
Exactly. But they often seem incomplete here. So the argument goes, doesn't that suggest a realm where these attributes are fully, perfectly manifested, where their ultimate implications are realized? The idea of divine mercy acting as an intercessor, which said Nursi discusses in the words, fits right into this.
And you often see that mercy in surprising ways, even amidst hardship, as Bediüzzaman points out.
Indeed. Even trials can be viewed through the lens of mercy within that larger framework. Which brings us back, actually, to another powerful aspect. The analogy of life, death, and rebirth in nature. We mentioned spring.
Right, but it's broader than just spring.
Oh, yes. It's a constant cycle you see everywhere. Leaves fall, plants seem to die back.
And then, boom, new life emerges. Death and rebirth, over and over.
And this is what Risale-i says about it, quoting that key verse again from the words, "Look upon the signs of God's mercy and see how he restores life to the earth after its death."
It keeps coming back to that.
Because it's such a clear parallel, said Nursi wants us to see. If God routinely brings nature back to life after its apparent death or dormancy, is it really such a leap to consider the resurrection of humans? Nature itself becomes a kind of ongoing demonstration of possibility.
It's a very visual, tangible argument.
Yeah.
And then, of course, there's the role of revelation itself, prophets, holy scriptures.
Absolutely fundamental. The witness of prophets and holy scriptures is a cornerstone aspect. Throughout the Risale-i collection, you see this profound engagement with the Quran. The role of divine revelation in affirming the hereafter is central.
And this is what Risale-i says about it.
Yeah.
Essentially, that the Quran's teachings on resurrection aren't just like an optional extra. They're woven into its very core message.
Precisely. It's presented as a central, undeniable truth. So you have this consistent message across prophets and scriptures, a powerful collective testimony pointing towards life after death.
Okay, now moving from the external world and scriptures to our inner world, Bediüzzaman also looks at human nature itself, right? Our potential, our desires.
Yes, think about your own potential, your aspirations. We strive for so much, but this life has limits. Often our deepest hopes or highest potentials feel unfulfilled here.
Yeah, that rings true. We dream big, sometimes bigger than this world seems to allow.
And that leads to the nature of human potential and desires as another aspect. The Risale-i, for instance, in the Flashes, talks about these almost boundless desires within us.
Desires that this finite world can't satisfy.
Right. So the hereafter is presented as the potential arena where these capacities can be fully realized, where the limitations we feel now are removed.
Like we're designed for more than this container.
Something like that, like a seed holding potential for a much greater blossoming. Then there's the sheer order and balance in the universe.
Ah, the cosmic order. Everything working together.
The intricate clockwork, you could say. This points strongly towards an intelligent, purposeful creator. And if you accept that,
then would such a creator just let it all end in pointless chaos?
Yeah.
With no accountability.
Exactly. It seems illogical. The rays in the Risale-i often emphasizes this order and balance as evidence of divine wisdom. It suggests purpose, and purpose implies continuation and consequence.
It all feels very interconnected. Which brings us back to accountability, doesn't it? That inner moral compass we all seem to have.
Yes, the concept of accountability and responsibility. It's a vital aspect. That inherent sense of right and wrong, the feeling that our choices matter and we're responsible for them.
It implies there must be consequences, right?
It strongly suggests a future stage for reckoning, aligning perfectly with that need for divine justice we talked about earlier. Your conscience itself hints at it.
Thinking more about our inner selves.
Yeah.
What about consciousness, memory, our unique identity?
Another profound aspect. the significance of human consciousness and memory. You are uniquely you because of your experiences, your memories, your awareness.
Yeah.
The idea of resurrection honors that. It suggests that your individual consciousness and identity aren't just temporary blips that vanish. They have enduring significance. Resurrection implies the preservation of that unique self.
So a continuity of me beyond just the physical, that's a comforting thought in a way. Now, let's be real. This world, it has its downsides. Suffering, loss, imperfection.
The limitations of this world. That's definitely an aspect to consider. The very fact that this world is imperfect, temporary, often painful.
It makes you long for something better.
Naturally, it creates a longing for permanence, for perfection, for lasting happiness. The concept of a perfect, eternal hereafter provides that necessary contrast, the fulfillment of that deep-seated desire.
So the imperfections here point towards the perfection there.
In a sense, yes. Like, this life is a preparation, maybe even a test for something far greater and more complete. And finally, there's the sheer breadth of belief itself.
You mean the fact that so many people across time and cultures have believed in an afterlife?
Exactly. The collective testimony of believers. This near universal belief in some form or another across vastly different societies and throughout history. Said Nursi suggests this isn't just coincidence.
It points towards something innate or divinely inspired.
Perhaps both. An inherent human intuition or a reflection of a universal truth imprinted on us. It's the 12th aspect, the weight of collective human conviction.
12 different angles, all converging on the same point. As we wrap up this deep dive into resurrection and the hereafter through Buddhism and Said Nursi's The 10th Word, I hope exploring these 12 aspects, even just touching on them,
has offered some fresh perspectives.
Yeah. Based on the material, it really shows a deep connection between the world we live in now and the promise or possibility of an eternal future.
And the Risale-i consistently encourages that reflection. Look at the signs in creation. Consider the wisdom behind things.
So maybe the question for our listeners is, what does all this mean for you? For your understanding of life's purpose, the weight of your choices?
What stands out most to you from these different proofs or perspectives? What questions does it raise?
Because this is just one part, the 10th word, within the huge ocean of the Risale-i collection.
Absolutely. There's so much more to explore, but perhaps a final thought to leave with. If even just one of these 12 aspects truly resonates, if one of these lines of reasoning makes you pause and think, yeah, that makes sense. What might that single resonance tell you about the nature of reality and your place within it?
A lot to ponder there. Thank you for joining us on Risale-i Podcasts.
You have listened to the Risale-i Podcasts, Window to the Universe. For more, please visit Risale-i TV.